Grab your reference photos, Wargamers, because today we are painting. And we are adding some details to our 6mm city. As you can see, I've already gotten started painting a couple of these blocks. I got one over here that still needs some detailing as well. This corner will wind up being a gas station. I need to build some pumps and an awning here, but we'll get to that later. We've got the Z shop over here, and I don't know if you can make out that painting there is Liquors. This little fella right here is from an old zombie game. I believe it's, what do they call that game? Resident Evil 2, I believe. And there you can see Liquors. Not quite as fancy right there, but hey, once you put it on the table and you see it's just a store with a whole bunch of flyers and ads in the windows, it'll be fine. One of the things I did, and I like to do to add a little more variety here, as you can see, I added a lovely door back here and one back here with maybe a light switch or something. I may need to put a light. But one of the things I want to do is add a little bit more graffiti like this. And so that's what I'm showing you today. One of the things to be aware of when you're painting, and so we're just going to go ahead and as I talk about painting 6mm, I'm going to go ahead and add some graffiti here. And I do have a reference photo over there on the computer. So that should make it a little bit easier. I am a wargaming artist, not a graffiti artist. So this is all a little bit strange to me, but there are a couple of tricks that I think I can share with you. And of course, the first trick is no real trick at all. It's a pretty easy thing to do, and that's take advantage of your reference photos. Hop online and find what you're looking for. So here's our, and go from there. Now, bear in mind, because we are painting in 6mm, the normal rule of Impressionism that we always use gets doubled down on this one. And what do I mean by that? Well, wargaming is trade-offs. We talked about this a little bit. In fact, it's one of the things that I picked up from old Ian Dickey when I read his Wargaming on the Cheap book. And that's that you've got a constant push-pull between realism and usability. Now, we are wargamers who use our terrain for something other than sending lovely trains spinning by it. And no slight against the model railroaders. God knows I've stolen a lot of ideas from those guys over the years, but they are chiefly concerned with realism. And as wargamers, we're not. The most realistic looking terrain is likely to be completely useless for what we have in mind. It doesn't matter how pretty the terrain is if there's no room for our carefully painted little dudes to get stuck in and get to fighting, then it's not going to do us a whole lot of good, is it? So the same rule applies, doubly so, when you're talking about 6mm. You want to give people the impression. And one of the things that we're going to do here with our little graffiti is give people the impression that somebody came by with a spray can and spray painted something. It's going to be a little more than a blur at normal distances. People who haven't watched this video, people that aren't the kind to get down and crouch to check line of sight, they're just going to see graffiti. They're going to see a blob of color and they're going to understand. And you, as the wargamer, as the man crafting this lovely work of art, have no obligation to make it any more detailed than is absolutely necessary to convey the concept of what it is that you're building. Now, you know, whether it's a hedgerow or, you know, in Normandy, or some inappropriate graffiti such as this, you just want to let people know, hey, this is a brush. And so you may take the time to research how tall the lovely bracken is that your guys are going to be fighting through, and you may not. One of the tricks that we use is if you like, it's always possible to sometimes, and I've done this fairly regularly, step down a scale for your buildings. Very few buildings that we use are to scale. We pay a little bit of attention. We kind of wink and nod at it, but honestly, let's take a look at this. Remember that our scale here for this city is 1 millimeter equals 1 foot. We're using 6 millimeter figures. This building is about 35 feet square, which is about 900 square feet. That's a pretty small Z-Mart. Most Z-Marts are going to be a lot bigger than that. So there you go. There's some graffiti. Now, we could be done with that. I think I'm going to go ahead and just add in just a little bit more shadow to make those colors pop a little bit better. And then we'll call it a day. As I was saying, we've got, you'll see on the next board that I grab, we've got a lot of buildings that just don't measure up. And on 15 millimeter it becomes especially so, that your ground scale is going to be all out of whack to your figure scale, and that's okay. That's okay, right? Whatever supports the game is what you're interested in pursuing. And, you know, I've seen guys that when they do their 15 millimeter figures, they use 6 millimeter terrain, and it looks fantastic. There you go. So there you go, just a little bit of shadow in there kind of helps it. You know, you can add a couple slashes through there if you wanted to. You'll note that when I was done painting this, I went ahead and dirtied it up down here, just added a little bit more color along here where the building meets the road, so to speak. So there you go, lovely little piece of graffiti. And we're done. Just a couple of minutes to add a little bit more to our 6 millimeter game. I am planning on putting a couple of dumpsters back here. They're not real big. They're not going to take up a whole lot of space, and they probably won't do anything game-wise. They won't mean anything. However, they will add a little bit of clutter, add a little bit of realism, add a little bit of, hey, this is a back alley. This is the next building suite that we're going to paint. And one of the things I did here, I haven't decided what to do with this little guy, but I did like having an alley through here that's going to be useful for our little Pac-Man maze. One of the things I did to add a little bit of difference, so let me show you real quick. These are a couple of buildings that I'm already pretty much done with. There's your backside, and this is meant to be the front of a police station. I don't know that it conveys police station yet. I probably need to put some of those specific lights, the sphere lights out front, or I don't know, some bollards around here to really, you know, hammer the fact that that's a police station. I got the safer way over here, a little back alley, so the guys that make bail can get dumped out. And of course, there's your arrows on the safer way, letting people know. I think that is it for this one. So that's kind of the aesthetic I'm going for. For the windows, here's a great example, right? These windows, when you look at them up close, they're just squares with a little bit of gray. And one of the things I did is I decided early on to make all of my windows consistent, dark gray with a little bit of flash. The doors can be whatever color. They're blue, maybe they're blue painted doors. That's fine. I use a little bit of card to break up the border between the building and the sidewalk. I may wind up putting some bushes along there to break it up further. That's what hedges are for, after all. Moving forward now those are already done, so they're glued in place. These I wanted to have a little better grip on, so I decided I'm not going to glue them down until after I've done the painting. As you can see, I didn't sand these all that well. You know what? That's okay. So looking at my reference figure now, this is we'll see how long it takes you to figure out exactly who I'm referencing here. Oh, you know what? I have to do one last little bit of touch up on this guy. As I look at my reference photo, I realize I got something wrong. Hang on, I'll be right back. There is no sense being coy here. I might as well show you what I'm doing. This building, looking at my reference photo, requires a couple of faux columns, one there and one there. So a little bit of glue, and oop, he's a little bit too tall, but I think this guy is gonna be just about right. So we'll glue him on there, and I'm not even gonna worry about putting any kind of base coat down on that. This cardstock is already white. I think it's already going to take paint like a champ. You can see I glued a little strip of balsa wood right there. And likewise, that now I went ahead and gave a nice white coat of paint just to make sure that it painted up nice on camera the first time. I'll move that over. And then I'll use a little bit of scrap wood to dust off this excess glue, because that's going to make her shiny. So we've got 3 businesses on this street. One is a nice blue, one is a nice lime green, and to add to the appeal, now that lime green really jumps out at you. It's just a big block of color. So I'm going to go ahead, ooh, sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead and make sure you're sticking. I'm going to just give it a little highlight of yellow, just to break up the monotony of those colors. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not too fussed about that wood grain, because when I hit it with a little dry brush there, turn down the brightness so maybe it comes out. There we go, yeah. So when I hit it with that little bit of yellow, it gives a little bit of variation. The world is not a static place. It can be a little dirty at times, and so by adding that little bit of yellow static to it, make it look a lot better. All right, moving along, we are going to go ahead and drop some doors in here. And this business here, now I'm just eyeballing this. I know that this piece of wood is a 1/2 inch. And a 1/2 inch is going to be, what is that? It's 1 inch to 24 millimeters. So 1/2 inch is going to be 12. So as long as I get this door to be a little bit more than halfway up, that's going to be a little bit more than the size of my dudes. Now, bear in mind, my guys are going to be 6 millimeters tall, but my guys are also going to be standing on a base. And that base is going to be glued to a washer for added stability and uniformity. Actually, not a washer. I went ahead and broke down Mr. Oh, you don't spend money you don't have to. Well, you know, I kind of had to. I broke down and I went ahead and I bought 1 inch square bases to save myself a whole lot of time. Alright, so we're just going to bang some doors on there. And then I think I will go ahead and we're going to call that door number 1, and we're going to put door number 2 over here underneath this awning. And again, that awning is just balsa wood. I did paint it white. And I think we're going to go ahead and do another door here. And for the sake of consistency and visual consistency, I'm going to go ahead and make all these doors the same color. So they should track all the same. Now in the real world they may be different colors, and that may, painting them different colors might add to the variety and make it look a little nicer, but there's no, well, I was going to say there's no wrong way to do this, but that's not true, is it? There's plenty of wrong ways to do it. But just because there's plenty of wrong ways to do a thing doesn't mean that there isn't more than one right way to do it too. So some of these doors are going to go off to the side, and I haven't decided where all these businesses are going to be yet. But I do know that I'm going to have fun with it. They will be businesses that you've heard of. Well, if you've watched any real amount of TV, you'll have heard of them anyway. Or who knows, maybe I'll just put references to my friends or my kids in here. If I do use references to my kids, you'll never know. So there you go, we got a nice selection of doors there. But this is the face that I'm looking at. This is the one I want to accomplish in this video. And that's all you got to do for the doors. Now again, those doors already track as doors. When your eyes see those. Alright, sorry about that. I got to be careful when I shake my bottles. I just edited out a camera bump. These columns are not quite dry, but we're not going to let that stop us. In fact, that's probably a little bit too high. So try and drag her down. If you have anything sticking up here, it'll catch during storage and it'll get knocked right off. I half suspect that I'm going to be gluing these awnings on and off because I haven't pinned them in place. They're just stuck on with wood glue. Just a little bit of this. Dries quick, but it is, I did glue. I wasn't sure about this, so I probably should have done my detailing first and then come back and painted everything. But I got a little impatient. And I decided that the thing to do would be go ahead and get the block colors on first. It'll save a little bit of time. And if I do have to glue these back on, that's not the end of the world. A little bit of maintenance is par for the course. I'm going to put a little white dot here to suggest a light of some sort. And then I think that's about it. Maybe I'll put a little white line here on this door. And I think that's it. Clean my brush, and we're going to do some more windows and doors now. There are a couple of different ways to do windows. One of the things you can do is go with a sky blue, but because I have buildings in a lot of different colors, I didn't want to use sky blue. For example, on this blue jobber, the sky blue might not have showed up so well. So what are we doing? We're doing our usual. I got some advice from a bud who said what you want to do is a dark gray with a light gray highlight. So just like we did on the police station, we're going to do the exact same thing here. And we're going to give this guy a couple little windows. And this guy is going to get a slightly different door. He's got a glass door. It's going to be about yay big. This is the door up to where he lives with his charming wife and 3 rather annoying children. Then we're going to paint a window to look into this establishment. And that's all we got to do. Now, you don't need to worry about this window. It doesn't look terribly square right now. It's alright. These windows are going to be a little bit higher. We're going to bring them down almost to the ground. And we're going to bring it over this way. So we're doing a horizontal window. We got a couple of tiny windows. We're doing a horizontal window, and we're doing a couple of, call it, darn near floor to ceiling windows on this guy. And it looks like we're going to be able to get a third one in there. I hope that's not making too much noise. I keep inadvertently using the tripod for my camera as a hand rest. Steady hand is key to this. Okay, so while those dry, we're going to shift back over to our nice bright yellow. And we've got a couple of different ways to show people what our establishments are. But this fella doesn't have a whole lot of money, so he just painted a sign right onto the wall. Or his sign is very thick. The gentleman in the pizza parlor across the street probably has enough money to do something a little more fancy, but our struggling business owner here is doing the best he can, and that just means a hand-painted sign. We'll put a little sign above this guy too. You know what? I think I forgot. Yeah, this was meant to be a window too. I better go back and clean that up. It's okay if you forget something. This is a painting, and you're not done painting until you decide you're done. So now it should look like, well, after I put my little decorative cartouches on there, I think we'll drop some color in here too to break up the monotony of that brown. And there you go. Now we're making some progress. These painting techniques are going to apply on everything that we paint in 6mm, also for the little men's. Now, remember how I said don't worry about whether or not that window is plumb and square? We're going to add a nice black border around it to help separate it from the colors. And again, you can see I got a little bit off. I can always go back and paint over that with a little bit of orange. I probably won't. I'm not going to worry about that layer of detail. Sometimes you can go back and clean it up in a lot of different ways. Now, this particular establishment, I'm just going to dot, 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 dot. And now it looks like writing. Don't ask me why, but it tracks as writing. Something about those little hash marks will let people understand, oh, there's fine print right there. Well, I'm not going to read that fine print. Same as when I use a website. I just click, yeah, I agree, whatever. There we go. Now our doors jump out. And we'll do this guy at the end as well. And one more door. This one is made of glass. And you can see I must be getting nervous. My hand is getting a little twitchy. And yet, these are smaller windows. We'll just set them off like that. And yet, she still looks pretty dang sharp. One thing you can do to help this track as a door is put a little crossbar here. For these other doors, maybe you want to put a little dot for a door handle there. These feel like double doors, so I'll put a couple little dots there. And we're looking good. So now, we will turn these windows from little gray squares into a nice reflective surface. And all you gotta do is put a little L. And actually, I don't think it matters where you put the L's. Upper right, upper left. The important thing is that you're consistent. The sun is going to strike all of these windows from the same direction at the same time. And we're going to put a little dot up in the corners of two of those big ones. We're going to put little dots there to brighten that up. And that's really all you got to do. And now we got windows. And those windows are exactly like the windows in the rest of the city. There may be a couple that look a little bit different, but those are going to read when you scan, when you stand back and see this terrain as it's all set up. Those are going to scan nice. So the last thing we have to do on this store frontage is outline this in red. And this is the one that's really going to take a steady hand. And you'll have to forgive me if you don't have a great view of this. But I'm resting my elbows and my wrists and everything right down. A little too much. We're going to narrow that down. I got them rested right on my painting surface because I need all the help I can get. There we go. So now we've got a business, and we can. Oh, this is a little too small. Okay. So we're going to say Bob's Burgers. There we go. Now, that might not look like it says Bob's Burgers to you, but anybody that's a fan of the show will recognize it's your funeral crematorium and the business that's always changing. This is Bob's Burgers reference, and it's the same color. Everything looks great. And if nobody ever sees this, nobody ever understands that this is Bob's Burgers, that's okay. It's called an inside joke. And the people who see that and recognize it will think it's awesome. And even if nobody else laughs at this little joke, I had a good time doing it. We're going to paint a little bit of white down the center of these just to brighten them up a little more, these columns. There you go. Now, Teddy, good old Teddy's got a place to go for his daily burger. And I think with that, we can safely assume that this terrain is set in an American town. We're going to put a little doorknob on that door too. And you see how that door is just a plain brown? With 6mm, you could leave it. But I have a compulsion. It's hard for me to leave things alone. I'm just going to add couple little dots here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now it looks a little bit like wood paneling. Breaks it up a little more. I think I'm going to do the same with this guy too. I don't like the way he turned out. So we're going to dab a little brown on there. There you go. You got a row of shops who are ready for the tourists coming from Wonder Wharf. What do you think? We got time to do one more set of buildings? I think we do. Let's do one more building. Now, as you can see, this terrain is pretty flat. What we're going to do is, after we get the buildings painted and glued down, once we know where those are going to be, then we'll know where the parking lots are going to be. I have another suite of little shops here, a block of them, with different kinds of awning and signs to give a little bit more 3D. I haven't done anything on this side, probably should. And, oh no, you know what, I'm not going to, and I'll tell you why. Because this is the alley for right here. And forces will be able to slip down this alley once we're done. In the meantime, one of the things I did here, and this is the only place I did this, I actually cut out just a little bit of mat board and painted it red, glued it down. Bob's your uncle. These doors are also going to have, now because this is one of your big box stores, It's going to have double doors at the front, and I'm not going to put any windows on it. I'm going to leave that outside strictly as is. And I'm doing that, so here's your entrance, and here's your exit. So this will be your, where they hold you up and make you wait in a line until enough customers have left the building so that you don't have to die of any communicable diseases. That's a thing we do now. Why red, John? I hear you asking. Well, we are going to be using this for a fun little game. If you watch the unboxing, you'll know that we're going to be not just painting the town red, but we're going to be burning this town down. So we need a couple of big box stores that will serve as appropriate targets for the ire of those who just cannot stand the kind of capitalism we have here. So this is going to be a store with a very recognizable brand, and we're going to put a nice big logo right here. And this store is going to be the kind of store that does everything in its power to be one of the cool kids in the hopes of not being a target, but of course in making a lot of noise they make themselves target. Now, if you've ever seen Braveheart, or if you're at all familiar, hey, you're a wargamer, what am I talking about? Of course you're familiar with this kind of shield. Bit of a buckler, a small little number with studs around the outside. It's the root word for, well, it's called, the Scots used it a lot for several hundred years, and old Braveheart himself carried one of these targes. It's a targe. So we're going to put a little shield logo on here, and when we do our play-by-plays and our battle reports as the looters charge through the city, one of the things they'll be able to target is the big box store. One of the things they can target with their cocktails, courtesy of Comrade Molotov, is the Targe. And then we've got a couple of brick walls on the back for the alley. So there's your Targe right there. Good luck, guys. You're going to need it. We got a different color red, so what I'm going to do is add a couple little stripes here and just a little blush of color just to break up that pure red. Nobody will notice it, but their brain will. And that's the secret to painting in 6mm. One other thing I'll say is you should always try to use colors that are one shade brighter than you think it needs. I'm really bad at that. And you may have noticed that with my 15mm figures. They all seem about one shade too dark. The smaller your scale gets, the more contrast you need to bring things out. So that's it, man. We are done with that one. We could actually glue it down, but I'm going to wait until I get this one done, and I'm going to measure to make it look as uniform as possible. Yeah, I use my finger. This is acrylics. It's water-based. It'll wash right off the soap and water, and we live in a time when we are constantly bombarded and reminded of the message that wash your hands, wash your dang hands, wash your dang hands. Okay, so I will wash my hands, and in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and finish painting up some more of these businesses. Maybe I'll put a Strickland propane, maybe a Panucci's pizza. If you have any other suggestions or ideas, go ahead and throw them in the comments. This video won't go live for 2 weeks, so it might be too late by then, but hey, life is complicated. The news is telling me that Hurricane Doogie is blowing in, and it is 2020, so as you can imagine, having your house wiped out by Hurricane Doogie is on point and on message for 2020. If it happens, it happens. It's all right. We get to start over. We get to build a whole new miniature collection. So long as we're all safe and sound, so long as we remember to say our bedtime prayers, and as long as we're all working together, pulling on the same rope in the same direction, watching each other's backs, taking care of each other, that's what it's all about. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope I could keep you company during one of your painting sessions and give you something to think about. maybe keep you company or you commute. Either way, this is just my small way of trying to give back to the wargaming community who has done so much for me over the years. And for that, I thank all of you. And we'll leave you with this. I sincerely hope that God will bless you. Good night.